Welcome everybody to the Mid-Curve podcast. My name is Funky Donk / Gavin Purcell, and I am here with our good friends from the Mid-Curve podcast that is part of our Discord group that spends a lot of time looking at the market. We spend a lot of time talking about the market. That's NFTs, that's crypto, that's tokens. It's basically everything that was down for a long time, and maybe there's some, maybe there's a sun rising on the horizon. A new dawn has begun. Tonight we have three regulars with us. Eric, why don't you introduce yourself and tell everybody a little tiny bit about your background in like 20 seconds or less.
Hey guys, this is Eric. Before this, I've had a pretty long background in TradFi as a full-time weirdo, and now I'm a full-time weirdo in crypto.
Great.
That's pretty much it.
You made it. That was exactly 19.75 seconds. I was timing you, so congratulations. Sadie, what about you? Give us your little spiel as well.
Hey guys, I'm Sadie. I work in private equity and buy financial services companies for a living. And these days I don't really sell them, so just buy them.
No, that's kind of fun. That's something you can continue to do forever then? You're just going to keep buying and collecting things?
One can only hope because the capital markets are a little tricky at the moment. So
Yes.
yeah, I think we're just going to aggregate until someone tells us we got to start selling.
That sounds fun. And then Grant, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hey folks, my name is Grant. I used to spend my time building PowerPoint decks. Now I spend my Saturday nights with a bunch of online weirdos.
Well, you've really moved up in the world, Grant. You've really moved up in the world. Okay, let's get started. Pretty significant week this week. I think we'll probably spend a lot of time talking about this, but we might as well jump right in. I mean, I think unless somebody feels differently, I think the Ripple XRP decision is probably where we should start off. It feels like it is kind of shaking a lot of trees and in an interesting way has changed the outlook for the crypto ecosystem slightly. I think, just to be clear, that anybody feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but I want to give the very top line is it was a kind of a mixed verdict result in that I think there was a guilty verdict, or actually, I don't want to explain this if somebody, Eric, maybe you have, or Sadie, one of you has a probably better direct understanding of it. All I know is it was partially guilty, but then also it was open to the idea that crypto is XRP was not a security. Is that correct?
So the judgment, as I understand it, was basically the sale of XRP on an exchange to retail investors did not constitute an investment contract, and so was not a security. But the sale of XRP OTC to basically institutional investors did establish a investment contract and was a security. And
Right.
And so this is kind of like this weird state where something can be like based on the context where something is in which something is marketed, it can constitute a security or it can be a commodity. And so the reason that a lot of people on CT interpreted it as a net victory was that your view was that much of the case that the SEC had against Coinbase was the fact that they were running like an unregistered exchange. They were basically doing selling unregistered securities. But under this interpretation.
Did I just lose you? Eric, did we lose you?
The feds cut him off.
Wow. Shocking. I'm shocked. Well, there you go. We lost Eric. He's been taken out. Let's go to you, Sadie. What do you think is going on with this? How do you think this is a big deal? I know we've talked about the idea that we wanted there to be some decision made on this in this sort of situation. What's your take on this?
So I think the case itself is very facts and circumstances dependent. So I hesitate to say that there's going to be kind of broad sweeping precedent that comes from it. But I do think it did something interesting, which is add nuance to this question, which is technically there's a difference between a security and a securities offering. And I think that's like an interesting nuance, because really what the judgment was around was whether something constituted an offering of securities. And that's a lot of times what we're talking about. A lot of times the rules don't actually hinge on whether the thing itself is a security, but whether you offered securities and doing what you were doing. And so one interesting thing is I think the judge at least opened the door to some ways to potentially distribute assets somewhat democratically that doesn't necessarily constitute an offering of securities, but it was really predicated on some pretty specific facts. And so I thought it was an interesting verdict. It added some nuance. It was a little bit unexpected, at least from my perspective. But again, I'm not sure that we can extrapolate too far. But in general, I think pretty positive.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, like, I felt pretty surprised by it, but now, obviously, everybody heard from my butchered idea of the understanding of it in the beginning. I am a newbie in that world, but it did seem to me to be like a clear signal that potentially decentralized currency in some way, in this a token or whatever, doesn't have to be considered that way. Grant, what is your take on the situation? Do you feel like informed enough to give an opinion on it?
Not particularly, but I think I do agree with the stated sentiment that, it adds nuance to the industry as a whole, right? That, like, not everything is a blanket scam and not everything is a blanket net good. Just like, everything else outside of this space. So I think it, does give us hope that we'll, start to see more clarity around other items, which again, hopefully puts us on the map with sort of, the big players in finance, as well as regain some retail interest in future years.
Yeah. So the one thing I keep thinking about with this, which is really interesting, I was listening to, I can't remember, some other podcast, and they were talking about the idea of this, like the CNBC watcher, right? And I know that's a terrible demographic to think about, but like you think about the CNBC watcher, who I kind of imagine is like the bro fitness guy. And the bro fitness guys in the world are definitely kind of like the if Bored Apes were people and didn't have the kind of backstory of NFTs, I can imagine they would be CNBC bros. I feel like if those people, weirdly, I kind of think those people are like the. I keep saying those people. It sounds like I'm being derogatory. I'm not really, but like I feel like if
though.
yeah, a little bit. I'm a little bit derogatory. What I'm just saying is, I feel like if that sentiment turns, which is an interesting sentiment because even though it's a small sliver of humanity, it actually feels like there's a real there's a action moment there where those people can often like trigger an interesting thing. I don't know, Eric, do you, in the TradFi world, do you feel like this is going to make waves amongst people that you've worked with before? Like, is this the kind of signal people have been waiting for?
Not really, because this is almost certainly going to get appealed.
Right.
And it's going to, potentially go all the way to the Supreme Court. So we're far, I think we're still a ways out for full clarity. And it sort of just continues to like highlight the need for elected representatives to actually come in and legislate the issue.
Right.
Instead of establishing clarity via litigation. And so I think this is, again, like, this is the first salvo. This is what I do say. This is, I think, more for like the crypto community, a bit of a context shift that to remind them that it's not like this us or them kind of like zero sum battle to the death. Like, there's obviously institutional interest in crypto as a whole. I think it's just people want better guardrails, so that to weed out like bad actors and make sure that everyone is on a level playing field, right? Because regardless of what you think about the SEC, there are allegations that there is market manipulation and that exchanges often trade against their own customers. That pretty much is a well-known fact that everyone that actually is in crypto just accepts as a given, and that shouldn't be the case, right? And so I think like, there's gonna be we still have a lot more to go, but so far I think it's very promising.
Right.
And we'll hopefully like just have better actors. But because, by the way, like if you read that decision, like one way to interpret like why they didn't find the exchange offering to retail to be a security was largely because like the fact pattern looks so fucked that like how can any retail person buying XRP reasonably expect to actually make money? Like what sort of investment contract from the get-go is that, right? And so
Right.
and then actually like that would actually in the case of XRP be like a super spot on interpretation, because it's just this really centralized like shitty like L1, I guess, that I don't even fucking know what it does,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And there's like the tokenomics and the fact like the way that they've monetized this thing has really long been on my line. So, you know, we just as a whole, let's just move on from that.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, well, I think it's worth shifting slightly into the idea of, let's assume that this is a story that's going to keep going. How have the markets reacted, and like, how are you all looking at the market's reactions to it? I think Sadie, you're somebody who kind of keeps an eye on the altcoin, shitcoin world. Do you feel like we're entering like kind of a buying phase right now? Do you feel like we're going to see some positive movement? I know we also had a pretty good inflation number, which I think kind of surprised a lot of people, that inflation, I think, came down to 3%. Do you see positive? Do you have dollar signs in your eyes, Sadie? Are you looking, is your tongue hanging out and you're excited to kind of get into the world of tokens again?
I have tended to treat these news events as kind of opportunistic trading opportunities because people don't tend to understand them, and so the market's a little bit inefficient. But I actually currently don't hold any crypto or NFTs.
Wow, nothing at all.
Nothing.
Wow.
I don't think this is particularly pivotal one way or another because I don't think it brings in anyone new. So I find that a lot of times when folks who are already in crypto are saying, oh, well, the inflation number is making me do X, Y, or Z, they're kind of just justifying what they wanted to do anyway.
Yeah, of course.
I mean, inflation fundamentally has nothing to do with our $1 million market cap shitcoin.
Are you telling me that Harry Potter, Obama, Sonic Inu is not determined by Jerome Powell?
I mean, Harry Potter, Obama, Sonic Inu is determined by the universe.
It's so true. So true.
Predetermined. The best shitcoin this year, in my opinion. Yeah, so I think these prices have swung a little hard, and one thing that just does stick in my mind is there's still a pretty reasonable amount of selling pressure on Ethereum that has kind of existed throughout. So I don't think it goes super low, but I think there's some buying opportunities upcoming. I don't think we missed the boat.
So let me be clear. You don't hold crypto now because do you believe that you're going to be able to get it cheaper, or is it just that you feel like being part of the market, you don't trust it right now?
Cheaper, but incorporating opportunity costs. So
Okay.
I think there are better short-term opportunities in the market right now, but that could easily change. So I value holding cash above ETH right now.
That's fair. Grant, what about you? Do you see this as an opportunity right now? Or are you like actively? I've seen you in the Discord actively stepping into a few tokens here and there, but where are you at?
I think my time spent on actively trading is probably reflective of my view of how things shake out. I'm probably closer to Sadie than CT right now. I think usually saw the last hike on on what the Fed is doing, and it seems like the significance of this event seems to be a little bit overstated, and I think if you look at the charts, like it swung into the momentum swung into alts a little too fast as well, which is never great. Especially in kind of a low liquidity environment. So yeah, right now I'm like spending way more time like talking to founders, figuring out what deals I want to put my money into. And yeah, I think that's largely reflective of my view that, you know, things are cheap right now. They could probably get a little bit cheaper before next year, which is I think when the music turns a little bit, it changes and it goes from PvP, which is a little bit harder, survival of the fittest. You know, I've lived a soft, flabby life, and I'm not built for that. And next year becomes PvE, right? So things get a little
Well,
easier.
I do want to
Yeah.
ask you this. Let me ask you this. So let's be clear across the board. I think I would love to hear everybody's thoughts. So we'll start with you, Grant, is like, you believe a PvE time is coming again, and there is a PvE time on the horizon. Like, you feel confident in that now?
Yes. Like, are you saying like in crypto or like generally?
I'm saying in crypto. I'm not talking about. I mean, NFTs. Who the fuck knows, right? Like, I think all of us are in a real weird place with NFTs, or at least I know I am personally. But I'm talking more in crypto, just in crypto.
Oh yeah, like 100%.
Yeah.
There'll be like at least one more cycle.
All right. What about you, Eric? You believe one more cycle, at least?
Yeah, I mean, what we still don't have fucking product, right? Like I keep going back to this. It's just like,
But is it bad that we would have product? That's my question. This is where it comes down to:
well,
is product bad?
I think the fact that you even have to answer that question is pretty indicative of, like, you know, how scarred we all are with
Yes.
the space and its collective inability to deliver, right? And
Yeah.
so it's just, you know, do we have good product within DeFi? No, we don't, right?
Right.
We have, I think we have good market makers in DeFi, and so it allows people to basically sling shit back and forth and make some money. But it really, like, you know, at the end of the day, it still comes out of it. It's a zero sum game, right? So will we have another cycle? Yeah, because we haven't really, like, kind of think about like the adoption curve, right? Like we just, you know, whenever a new technology gets introduced, you go through this massive speculative bubble where speculation, like all of the speculative value, massively out trumps any, you know, just any the productive value. And so eventually, when it comes to things like the internet, when it comes to e-commerce, when it comes to, you know, the software as a service, whatever, like, you do get to an inflection point where the productive value of the thing is greater than the speculative value, and that's when you have sort of these like 5 to 10 year, you know, adoption cycles, where the Airbnbs, Ubers, and whatnot get created. Like,
Yeah.
haven't really had we haven't really had that in crypto, because, like, OG DeFi, you know, when you look at it, it's just shitty tokenomics. It's a service that hasn't really innovated. It's not very good, right? And so, like, you know, and we like the new products that we have are still not better than like what exists within Web 2. So we just, yeah, like, I think we're gonna get another cycle. We're not at that point. Like, you know, is the inflation print gonna herald the beginning of that cycle? No. Like, if you want to play that, go trade stocks. Like, I spent 8 minutes basically a week trading options on my you know, LARP, like, trading account for stocks. And the ROI on that is basically like 5x the ROI is spent trading perps on crypto. It's just completely, you know, it's just a completely different game. Like, I just think, like, if you're gonna do that, just go to the better market, and make it easy for yourself. But so yeah, I think, you know, like, it's patience is always key here. There's always going to be another trade in crypto. You're not missing the next 10 to 20x, despite what CT is telling you.
Sadie, before we move on, do you believe there will be another PVE season, crypto comeback in the next, like, say, year?
I I think I would answer the question as yes, but I think we might be thinking about crypto product wrong.
Mm.
Like, practically, one doesn't create financial services businesses, which is fundamentally what DeFi protocols are, to just like buy stocks or things for the purpose of getting rich. Like, you create them because people want to buy homes or education or healthcare or big expensive things they want, like Pelotons or, you know, whatever. And so, in the context of crypto, the use case is programmable money. And what the use case for the programmable money is not other crypto, it's just other stuff.
Okay. Right.
And so for me, I think the confluence of AI and crypto is interesting because it allows more of the population to be able to program their money.
Interesting. Now you're talking my language. Now I want to hear more about this.
And so I think, I don't know if it's like unequivocally positive, right? But I think tech actually had to catch up rather than crypto catching up with itself, because it's a ledger, right? Like that is the use case. Trying to convince people to create product out of financial services is a recipe for predatory product.
Yeah.
But if you have use cases for tokens online, then all of a sudden that's the product.
It's funny. It's like, it's not even the picks and shovel argument. It's more like there's gold, and then we created gold 2, gold 3, and layer 4 gold, and they're all the same sort of thing that we're just going to trade those. No, I actually agree with that. I think that's a really interesting point. Is the question is like when I thought, at least in the crypto cycle, of like, okay, it means an up arrow, and I mean PvE world means that like all sorts of things will come out that you can make money on, which I'm sure will be the case. But then the question becomes is like, will the up arrow be more about like what might look more like a traditional like kind of like startup cycle rather than a token cycle where there's a crazy amount of money to be made? And Grant, maybe this goes back to your point about looking at companies and trying to see the companies and putting bets on companies rather than necessarily protocols and tokens. I don't know. What do you think about that?
I don't know that I agree. Like most of the things I'm looking at, like they require a broad user base, which is again like something we haven't really seen outside of like small windows and pockets and DeFi 1.0, NFTs 1.0. It's never been sustainable, and I'm not particularly expecting the next cycle to be either. I just think certain things are worth picking up, particularly if they're backed by strong teams and already have some social proof in place. I think it's still the thesis remains the same, right? Like the around the fringes can improve, the UI can improve, the product can improve, but it's still going to be all about an open air casino that you don't have to fly to Atlantic City or Vegas or Macau to access.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Speaking of, let's, before we move on to true open air casinos, which is kind of the NFT and shitcoin markets, the Bitcoin ETF kind of keeps moving in one direction. Eric, I don't know, do you have an update on those at all, or is it worth talking about? Have we made any significant progress from last time? It seemed like there was a momentary hiccup and then it's back on a little bit. Is there anything that we're missing there?
Well, I do. What momentary hiccup are you talking about?
The momentary hiccup I heard was that there was I mean, I honestly, this is literally a tweet that I saw at some point where there was another stopping point that people had been convinced was going to put BlackRock off of it, and then BlackRock kind of pushed through it. I really don't know what it is, but maybe I'm speaking out of my ass.
Was the obstacle that a BlackRock NFT was listed on OpenSea?
I think I can take that. I think I can take that one, Funky. This was like
Thank
exactly
you. Please,
what I mean.
Save me.
I got you. This is what I mean when I say the market remains like pretty inefficient. So this was a trading opportunity, I think last weekend, that I was in the car for, but I think I was able to give a couple of folks in our Discord a heads up around, which is when the SEC sends back comments, the nomenclature they use is deficiencies.
Yes.
And so there was crypto news that said basically like
that's exactly what
application
this was.
is deficient, and Bitcoin like took a nosedive. But practically it's actually positive, because if they're commenting on deficiencies, it means they're commenting, right? They're not rejecting the application, they're commenting on it. And so there was just kind of a momentary buying opportunity, but it was always bullish. I think the headline was just a little
there you go. That's perfect, Sadie. That's exactly what I want to hear, because it's so funny you say that, because what I got out of it was just enough to make me dangerous, right? Just enough that if I were a super dummy who had like, 7 figures of liquid Bitcoin, I could have been like, duh, I got to sell this out before it's gone. So like, I think that's a really important thing to be kind of aware of, like what how information can be valuable. Okay. Anything else on the crypto side we want to talk about before we swap over to what's a much less interesting slash exciting market of NFTs right now?
Well, Alex Mashinsky got arrested, so that was nice.
Yeah, I don't know that story. Tell us what it is.
Well, he's the guy behind the fuck who did Celsius and raised
Oh,
VC money, and then subsequently, lost all of his depositors' money because he had no idea what he was doing. And much of the yield that they were generating was actually costing them money because they were just stacking up in permanent loss after impermanent loss. So like the whole thing was just a house of cards. Obviously, when post Luna it collapsed, because they were not fully back reserved. And he's more or less been a free man until recently, even though it's very, very clear if you look at the way that he was pumping Celsius tokens outside. None of the investors that gave money to him had any idea what was going on behind the scenes, that there was bad stuff going on. So I like the fact that bad actors from kind of this prior era are actually being held accountable. I think, again, like as we push forward with institutional adoption and more retail coming in, like you need to see more of this. More people have to go to jail is kind of the long short of it.
that makes sense to me. I think that's a good thing. I think that opens the door to also when you talk about narratives as well. Like I think there is definitely something to be said for the narratives of people, the bad actors being in jail, and then being able to, whether or not I buy this yet, but being able to have the good actors come out and say, "Look, we're good actors. We put the bad people away because they've done X, Y, and Z." I think that goes a long way in terms of like at least signaling to the mainstream that there's something significant going on in terms of the idea of crypto coming back. I do think one of the things that people in the crypto in crypto Twitter, but just who are familiar and spending time in crypto underestimate is how bad the narrative has gotten across the board in a lot of ways. Like I think now, granted, I think this is probably very similar to the vibes in the 2018, 2019 world of crypto post ICO, where I'm assuming, because I was in the middle of it then, but I'm assuming the mainstream sentiment was the same, which was just like it's all criminals, it's gone for good riddance sort of thing. So it's nice to see at least that there are people being sent to prison, but also like that happened in 2018 I think as well, right, Eric? So like I don't know, does it feel like it's just new people, same story?
Look at, like, broadly speaking, the founders that we have in Web3, whether you want to look at like NFTs or whether you want to look at just like crypto protocol level stuff, like how many of those can you really look at and say like, wow, this is a serious individual who would have had success in another professional field? Um, because I think like after everything that we looked at, like 90% of these guys would not be able to get a job, like should not have been hired at a fucking McDonald's. And that I think is still like the biggest problem, right? Like with the space as a whole is that they're just the people, like with the way that we value on anonymity, um it just creates like openings for a lot of con artists to kind of come in and extract value. And so when you kind of say like, is it just the same thing happening again? Like, yeah, like I just, until we start to get like serious people in this space doing like serious things in greater scale, I just this is gonna keep happening. Like you can't, like I can't really look at it and say that, well, like when Shinsi was the last guy, this is all over, because fucking Aptos launched this year and did the exact same thing. And Sui, to a lesser extent, it is kind of on the same fact pattern, right? And so you kind of have to look at the individuals, but you also have to look at like the institutions on the VC side that facilitate a lot of this, and where the economic incentives lie.
Right. Okay. That makes sense to me. Okay, let's shift over quickly. We don't have to spend a crazy amount of time to the NFT side. It's been pretty ugly, mostly in the NFT side. I mean, the one bright spot is, as we joked about before, Proto Gremlins are back from they were banished to like a 0.15, and because of the Harry Potter Sonic Obama Inu token moving there, I think at like 0.6 or so. Most other NFT stories have been pretty either flat or down this week, and we had another pretty big failed mint with the Ether mint that was kind of a shit show. I don't know if there's a lot going on that's exciting about NFTs right now. Does anybody feel excited about anything in the world of NFTs at this current moment?
No.
Grant, what about you?
No. But I mean, I'm excited to see how we treat meme token whenever that comes around, because I've been thinking about it. Like I've been holding some of it in my portfolio for a bit, but I just think like there's so much excitement around it, and everyone's treating it as kind of this novel concept, but like actually it was pioneered in spring of 2021 by Cyberkongs, like an NFT 721 that yields ERC20 if you hold it, which is essentially what's going on once you set aside the pre-sale shit. And the vague notion that Binance is going to support it, and the vague notion that it's somehow going to be legal in Hong Kong while sort of not being legal in the US. Like it's been done before, right? And I think people in this environment, they adapt fast, right? And if it's not a new game, then it's just going to like end in a predictable way, and often faster than the previous time. So I'm just curious how it will turn out. I think it'll still be like a high liquidity, high volatility event, which ultimately is kind of good for the space. But yeah, otherwise, really, I mean, we've been saying this for as long as we had the podcast. Like we just need something new, right? Like we need a loot from summer 2021. Even the fucking Daigaku, which was super cringe, was like, it at least had like a full season of like, hey, here's a VC gaming project, here's another VC gaming project, blah 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 blah. Like we've had none of that really since the open edition meta.
Yeah, it's funny. That's exactly right. That's a good point. That was like the big kind of moment we had. I guess, when you think about the checks and open pens and all the stuff that happened then, the Digi Daigaku thing is so interesting to me because like in a way it really did come out of the blue, and it felt like the NFT whales like jumped on it very quickly, and we haven't seen something like that now for. I mean, think about it, the checks movement was, I think, back in February, and like that is a very long time in the NFT space to have gone without something of significance coming out, which always makes me like my spider senses tingle a little bit, but also like it has not it's not been a traditionally very good time. Now, granted, maybe I always have this theory that there are these magical unicorn teams out there that are holding on to some stealth project and just waiting for the best time to do it. But I feel like there's been plenty of times in the last, say, 6 weeks to 2 months to do it, and nothing has come. So maybe there just isn't out there, and we're just waiting for whatever the next interesting thing is. And it's just going to be. I think your loot comparison is pretty interesting, Grant, and that like loot felt like something at least like that was different than what was out there at the current time, and did kind of excite the universe of it. Now, granted, we were just starting in what we now know as kind of like the true NFT bull, which was like, let's say, this late summer 2021 to maybe,
from
early,
what I remember,
maybe March
the market should have
2022.
topped then, because Yuga took harbinger of what was to come, but they took out a huge chunk for the market, right? Like an unprecedented amount, which was, I think it was 10, yeah,
With
10K
mutants, is
times
that what you're
3
talking
ETH,
about?
right? And the market should
Yeah.
have topped locally then heavily,
Yeah.
but it dropped the same weekend, right?
Yeah.
And it just for 1 to 2
Yeah.
months after that, it was just derivative after derivative that printed money for
Chaos.
minters and early buyers, right?
Yeah.
That's what we need.
Yeah,
basically.
for sure. Yep. Yeah. So maybe
Yeah,
that'll come
Grant,
on.
I
Yeah.
think flows probably explain that, right? Which is the market could have topped if no new flows came in, but a lot of new entrants came in that at that time. Here, Funky saying, well, like, it's been so long, why isn't there a new project? And I think it's because everyone's out of money.
Yep.
That's very possible, I think. I think that seems very possible.
Yeah, it just I think like meme coin will be an interesting one because it's kind of one of the few opportunities the space has to get outside liquidity. And so it just either is gonna be good or it's not gonna be so good. The outcomes are pretty binary, but I mean, like, it's not so doom and gloom. I just think, but I think it's more so that this game of like PFP hot potato is there's just no demand to really play it anymore. Because when you look at art, like really like art is fine, right? Like
Yeah.
OpenPin like checks. These are more art focused projects that kind of have found their footing because they're like, it's our project. Like there's artists are participating. It's interesting, and so people who like art like these things. Like there is actually something of substance being offered, right, in a project, and they're kind of experimenting with like different delivery methods. So that gives them continuity. But like, I like, are we like, who really is going to participate in another PFP driven like Ponzi at this point within the existing entrance? Like everybody's too scared to like actually fully buy in, right? And then like a PFP Ponzi is just another iteration of 3-3, which means that it's good if no one sells, right? But the first but the it's always prisoner's dilemma, and the first person to blink and sell and capitulate starts the cascade, and then everything goes to zero. It's just people are blinking much, much quicker. I just, again, like I don't know what salsa it is. I just think we need better builders in the space in aggregate. And one of the funnier things I think is like Blur is probably one of the better products that have launched in the past year. But unfortunately, their counterparty is, Pac-Man's counterparty is the NFT founders of the space who are hell bent on taking his TAM to zero. And that's largely been what's happening.
Yeah, totally. I was gonna say, so I think that's 100% right. I think that the idea of the 10K, 20K drop to get another drop, mutant, whatever thing. I think somebody pointed it out. I think it might have been in our Discord, might have been somewhere else, which is basically Ether is the perfect, like, kind of nail in that coffin, which is like, it's just done. We've done it. It's kind of over. That doesn't mean that like PFPs are fully over or that like, an airdrops type of thing is over. But I think somebody has to come along with a slightly different sort of mechanic that's interesting. I think I've said this on this podcast, but I've been kind of actively thinking about this subscription model pretty deeply and trying to figure out if there's some interesting pathway to a subscription style NFT that could actually be a beneficial business. I think that's an interesting place to look at. I think the whole gaming market's interesting to me, but I also think the gaming side is to me, I think the people that are interested in gaming NFTs are overhyping them as assets of value and are less. Honestly, I think the idea of gaming companies as an investment is much more interesting than gaming NFTs as an investment for myself. Like, I don't necessarily think gaming NFTs are going up, whereas I do think Web3 gaming companies could be of significant value. And I think that's maybe goes to what we were talking about earlier, which is this idea of, instead of the market being financialized and just being about the tokens, it might be about the companies that are being created out of this space and less about the individual NFT that's owned in terms of money making. So I don't know. Anybody have a thought on that?
By subscription NFT, you meant like a AI waifu that screams mid-curve at you until you click the Patreon link for our podcast? Sorry, so what does subscription NFT
Well,
mean?
Okay, so here's what I've been thinking about, and I don't know what this means or what it is. And again, I'm not really planning on an NFT drop myself, or I've really just been trying to think of like what would you have to deliver, and what would it have to mean to say you minted an NFT and it was whatever. It could be free or it could be 0.05, and you have a mint and it is 10,000 or even less. Let's say there's 1,000 of them. And this is my, I'll tell the basics and I'll give you my weird kind of mechanic that I've built in here. The basics are every month, in order to keep the NFT, you have to pay another fee or a fee if it's free to begin. And I think the fee is very small, but it's something like 0.05 or more, depending on what you're going to do. And the reason why you do that is because you're going to be getting something out of it, right? Like it truly is going to give you some sort of utility. Now, what that is, I don't know what it is yet, but I think it could be multiple things. It could be access to access to another. It could be access to a meme card style drop. That could be like an art version of it, or it could literally be like a series of access points to clubs, to places around the world, or things like that as well. But I think the key to this is it can't be empty promises. It has to be something where you're building something from the get-go that is going to be valuable to be part of. And the reason why it's interesting to do as an NFT is that you would essentially acquire benefits over time that conceivably maybe there's something. This is my kind of like side note of this, is that there's a world where maybe the longer you hold it, the more valuable or rare the NFT gets. And then when you go to sell it, it has acquired benefits. I think these are the things that I've been thinking about, or like beneficial additive things that can add into the idea of owning an NFT other than just a JPEG, right? Something that makes it feel like you would want to subscribe to this thing. And yet you also want that thing to be fully sellable when you would like to sell it. So I think that's what I've been thinking. Grant, does that make sense?
No, but that's because I'm smooth brained. So
Well, I also, clearly, waifu, as Sadie is saying, OnlyFans is quite the idea as well too. I don't know, Sadie. Speaking of NFT stuff, like, have you thought about? Is there a future for this kind of like art NFT? Do you think or this PFP NFT? Do you think like there's any value in those going forward, or is there something else that's going to happen?
So I have like a little bit of a different view around utility, which is I think historically the PFP has been the highest utility NFT. And now that everyone's embarrassed to be affiliated with crypto, it's now the lowest utility NFT and trading accordingly. But if you think about it, like everyone spends their lives on social media, especially during the pandemic. That was true, and thereafter, and showing off like a really expensive profile picture, as long as like crypto is like not like just a tremendously embarrassing thing to be associated with, it does confer utility. Like all these like idiot apes became people who like actually had audiences because they had ape PFPs. I mean, it's just wild, but that was like the ultimate utility, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now that crypto has had such a PR hit, I think that's why we're seeing nobody really want expensive PFPs or really any PFPs. I sold my Digi like a long time ago, and I just keep it for the irony. But like most people don't want an ironic profile picture.
But they don't want a reminder that they had something that was worth $500,000 and they decide not to sell it. That's not like value add to their day.
Whole thing. But yeah, I think we have to think about what the ultimate utility is now. Like, what do people want? Sex is definitely part of it. Respect, wealth, maybe, but I think it's more about like what that stuff got people in terms of audience or captive
Right.
audience, as the case may be. And it's like not, unfortunately, gonna be like a really sophisticated buyer, right? Like I think we've seen an art subscription like go poorly and among kind of like the highest end types in the space, right? Like 6529
Yes.
can't get
Yes.
that to work, then it's not going
Yes.
to work.
Yes.
But I could see other things that work. The other outside of PFP is, to me, the NFT with the most utility was the Donald Trump NFT.
Because it actually provided access to Trump. Is that why?
Yeah. So, sell what people actually want.
I mean, by the
And are
way,
willing
it's
to spend money on.
VFriends. Do you know what I mean? It's original VFriends. And original VFriends was the ultimate in access to Gary Vaynerchuk. And that is utility, right? I mean, I think that there is a world where access still matters. Like, I still, it's interesting to me that the NFL pursued like a Top Shot model, which of course, right? Like it was a money printer for the NBA and felt like it was going to make sense. But the problem with the Top Shot model is that it's continual supply. Like I'm kind of shocked that, and probably I'm just not thinking of it. I'm sure they have done, but like you would think one of the smart owners from the NFL would find a way to kind of like, I don't know, create a 500 collection of NFTs that would deliver some sort of extreme access to super fans. Like that to me feels like there's really interesting space to be done there that I don't know has if going back to our point of like the true A players in this world, if the right people have come in to execute that kind of stuff yet. Because I think the minute that they go wrong, then those people get cold feet. But I do think there's an interesting model to be done something there. So who knows? It's definitely not the best time in NFTs, I think, across the board. I think that's kind of it this week. It's weirdly a slow week, even though with all the crypto news. And does anybody have anything else they wanted to hit before we move on? Everybody kind of like heads down for this week. Anything? Okay, well, let's do our check. I'm sure the answer, I can't imagine anybody's out there really looking forward to anything, but I will ask you all. Eric, is there anything in the crypto, NFT, or even TradFi world you're looking forward to for this upcoming week or two?
I mean, outside of FOMEC, no. I think everyone, what's going to happen is we're just gonna wait for this this ETF announcement, and everyone's basically gonna die trading on leverage between Bitcoin 30K and Bitcoin 32K. Then that'll be pretty much it for like the foreseeable future.
God, that's a dark place. It's a very strange place. Sadie, what about you? Anything on the upcoming horizon that you're interested in?
The Genesis bankruptcy hearing next week should be fun.
Oh, that's interesting. What do you expect to come out of it?
I actually genuinely don't know, which is part of the reason why it's fun. Every time is a wild card, and this one's somewhat consequential, just in terms of what's gonna happen next. So, should be a fun one.
All right, that sounds fun. I'll keep my eye out for it. Grant, what about you? What are you looking forward to?
Nothing public.
Oh my God.
Hey Grant, are you good? You good?
This is a pretty indicative state of the market right now.
I know, right? It's really funny.
Kicking me down an extra year. No, I'm just kidding. I think just I mean this is what we expected, right? Like 2024 is when things start to ease up, and back up 2022 till the end of this year is just, it's got to be a grind either way, right? Like either you kind of ignore the space and then come back when it's easier, or you be like me and you're like mentally ill and trying to find like desperately trying to find like nuggets of hope in this mud, right? Like Eric was saying earlier, like last year when we invested in Blur, that was like a voluntary choice to like long the infra layer of the space and short projects with specific options in the space, which turned out to be the right call, right? And it's just
except the projects in aggregate decided
let's not talk
you
about
can
that,
build a better
please.
marketplace.
Please. I'm already depressed enough. But yeah, I think just to end on a hopeful note, like every minute you spend in this space, like you better not be just reading doomer threads or crafting doomer threads. Like it's just level yourself up until things get easier, right?
Yeah, I think that's a very good advice. I think that also, like, again, it's like just don't walk away fully. That's the big advice I can give everybody, is just keep your eye on stuff. And that weird shitcoin season that came not out of the blue, but like it was pretty significant shitcoin season that would never expected that to happen. I guess in some ways that's the thing that happened post the checks thing, right? We didn't get a new NFT that blew up, but we did get like a very big shitcoin season that I think some people did pretty well on. And then unfortunately, some people got caught in the casino too long and did not do well. But we did have something. There was action. So it was something to be aware of. Okay. That's it for this week. Hopefully it's just the doldrums of summer. We are in the middle of July. It's like dead center summer. It's July 15th today. So maybe we'll see some fun stuff coming up in the next couple weeks that we could expect to happen in August, September, October. But for right now, that's it for the Midcurve podcast. Thanks everybody for tuning in. We promise next time it'll be a little bit more optimistic, I hope.
I make no such promises.
Yeah.
And we shouldn't make these promises.
That's fair enough. That's fair enough. I will at least come with a better sense of
subscribe to our podcast or else.
Oh yeah, okay. We want to start threatening people. Is that the plan? That sounds like a good idea. We might as well start threatening people. Subscribe to our podcast.
What was
crafting
this?
the byline of our AI bot.
What is this? The Gemini. This is the Cameron Winklevoss threat to Barry. Please pay me back my money, or else I would write another letter. Yeah. All right.
I also want to tease everybody. There's going to be a Midcurve token and a Midcurve NFT if you subscribe. That is part of our utility that we're providing. So once you subscribe, you get on a list that you get a PO app, and the PO app, once you collect 15 of them, you will be able to mint the NFT. So I just want to make sure everybody's already starting that now. So subscribe, please. At some point, Pomp is going to convince us to do an NFT, I'm sure, and we all have to push back hard against it.
And I would just like to note that this is not an offer to buy or sell securities, and past performance is not a guarantee of future results.
And also, I will cooperate in any future investigation against.
I don't know these people. I don't even know why I'm here.
There you go. Everybody's getting their disclaimers out of the way. Okay, everybody, have a good week. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye, y'all.